Welcome all again. Thank you for being here in tropical Orlando, Florida, where the current weather feels like April in New Jersey. You're welcome. My name is Scott Engelsman. I'm the Chief Mission Officer for the Reformed Church in America, where every day I get to come to work and tell stories of amazing people who are, frankly, the best in the business. I'm super lucky, and so is my team. You'll get to meet most of our global mission team throughout these next few days. But there's a whole bunch of other people here from the RCA who are on staff of the RCA, and I'm not going to call you all out. I'm just going to ask you all to stand so that the people who are here know who you are and can find you throughout the next 3 days to find out what it is that you do. Because frankly, we have a small team, and it's these folks who help us make an impact around the world. Like I said, every day I get to come to work and I share amazing and incredible stories of people who really are the best at what they do. The success of RCA Global Mission has always been because of our people. It's been about people who have responded to a call that they were given by God to go and help others and to tell them about Jesus. We've been doing this for just a little bit of time, like almost 400 years. Global Mission is as big a part of the RCA today as it ever has been, and that's in large part because of the support of the guy next to me. If you don't know, Eddie Aliman is the General Secretary of the RCA. That means he's all those people's boss. And Eddie and I can trace our relationship, our friendship, back to Global Mission. I first met this Nicaraguan guy in India at a time that he lived in California and carried a Canadian passport. Yes. So Eddie is truly a global missionary. Eddie, you've always been very supportive of Global Mission, and it's been a big part of your life. How would you represent that your journey to this position that you're in now has impacted your view of Global Mission?
Yeah. Buenas tardes. So glad to be here. This is great. I've been praying for this event, praying for you, praying for all of our missionaries and our mission partners around the world. I had a lot of great opportunity to see many of you. Just a couple of weeks ago, I met with one of our missionaries in Nicaragua. I was visiting my family, but I said to my wife, I promise you that I'm going to only work in the front end of our trip. I need to meet with our missionaries, I need to meet with our mission partners in Nicaragua, and then we take vacation. So that's what we did, and it was great to meet in Nicaragua with Nicole, with Emily Reyes from CEPAD, Nicole Obgenord. It was great to see the work that our missionaries are doing around the world. So my journey to the position that I have, Scott, it was an unexpected one. Becoming General Secretary of a mainline denomination in North America was not in my bucket list. I know many of us have bucket lists, things that we would love to do sometime in our lives. So becoming General Secretary was not in my bucket list. So it was a unique process, especially in the season and the time of the Reformed Church in America. So 6.5 years ago, the General Synod of the Reformed Church in America installed me as the General Secretary. I remember it was a long conversation at General Synod until one guy stood up after 2.5 hours of interviews, and his name is Wes Gramber Michelson. And from the back, Wes said, Eddie, I have a question for you. And he said, man, I am impressed how you're responding to questions for 2.5 hours. And he said, do you know how many questions General Synod asked me when I became General Secretary? And I said, no, Wes, I don't know. And he said, 1. And now, and then he just sat down. So it's been quite a journey for me. I've been led through Vision 2020. I led through the COVID-19 pandemic. I led through the restructuring team, and we're in that process 6.5 years later. We're still standing, moving forward. We're strong. I think we're stronger than ever, and we have a great future for the work of the RCA. You know, my love for global mission, Scott, and I think that's a great question that you're asking. I love global mission because I am a missionary myself. So I am a pastor. I have been a pastor in Canada. I have been a pastor in California. And I am a missionary. I consider myself to be a reverse missionary. So I am those people coming from the global south to lead in North America, and I'm trying to do it, with the best of my ability, and supporting our missionaries, supporting the work of mission. And I love Jesus. I love the gospel. I believe that every single human being needs to hear the message of the good news of Jesus Christ. That's why I love mission work. I love missionaries. You are my heroes. Every time I visit, our missionaries doing mission work, I was just in Africa with Derek. It is just amazing. We flew out of Nairobi into one little area, and I was asking the pilot, "Hey, do you know where you're going to be landing?" And I said, "I know that we took off from an airport, but we're going to a little village. Do you know where we're going to be landing?" And then he just looked at me. He said, "Not really. I was checking on Google Earth yesterday." And then we're just flying. And then he did a great job in landing. But that's how mission work happens, It is just like, wow, you know where you're taking off, but you don't know where you're going to be landing. So I love our missionaries and our mission work.
Yeah, it's funny, people often ask me, Eddie, you guys do so many different things, RCA Global Mission. How do you know if you're succeeding at all as a whole group? And I think the easy answer to that question, I said this yesterday, I was with our partners from IPM in Brazil, and I said, if at the end of the year we can look as a group and say, hey, there's more people who felt the love of Jesus this year because of what we do than there was the year before, then we succeeded, right?
Amen.
Let's just keep it as simple as we can. You were a local church pastor for a long time before you came to do this.
Yes.
There's a ton of good mission agencies out there. I don't think we need to convince anybody here that we should be doing mission and that everybody has a call as a missionary in some way. But Eddie, in your time and as you go to ecumenical gatherings and different things, why is it that you think there's still such a value for the local church being engaged in global mission and for denominations to be leading that effort?
Yeah, that's a great question, Scott. I was a pastor, I was a church planter in California and also in Canada. That's why I also hold a Canadian passport. Early on in my ministry, I was 25 years old when I began in my first church plant. I was a 25-year-old pastor with no education, theological training. I went to seminary after 5 years of being a pastor. So early on in my ministry, Ephesians 4 was a really key passage for me, and I took that to heart, especially verses 11 and 12. Verse 11 of Ephesians says that Christ himself gave some to be apostles, some to be prophets, some to be evangelists, some to be pastors and teachers. Then verse 12 says to equip the saints for the work of ministry. So early on, I learned that my job, my calling as one of those leaders named on verse 11 was to train and equip those on the verse 12 for the works of ministry. So early on, I knew that my job as a pastor, as a leader of a church, was to equip the saints for the work of ministry. So that means that the whole congregation needs to be involved in mission work. The whole congregation needs to be involved in local and global mission. So the church really needs to be connected with the proclamation of the good news of Jesus Christ to the world. And that's what I did as a young pastor back in the 90s, proclaiming and teaching about that and leading, the church to be involved in the work of global mission. So we did a lot of mission work locally, and also our church was involved in the work of the proclamation of the good news in word and also in deed. I remember when Global Mission invited me. I was a young pastor back in Canada. In Central America happened that a Hurricane Mitch. I don't know if you remember that. Some of you remember Hurricane Mitch doing a lot of devastation in Central America. And because I do speak Spanish and I was born in Nicaragua, Global Mission was doing some important work in Nicaragua back then. And that was my initial connections with RCA Global Mission. 1998. I was just a young pastor, doing mission work, doing pastoral work in Canada with the Classes of Ontario of the Reformed Church. And Global Missions invited me to come along, and so we came in 1998, 1999, and the year 2000. So I went 3 years in a row, and I invited some people from my own church to come along and to serve in rebuilding some communities back in Nicaragua. For me, it was good to go back home where I came from. With RCA Global Mission to rebuild some of the houses and communities that were devastated by Hurricane Mitch. So I strongly believe that we need to be involved. My hope and my prayer for the future, Scott, and for the Global Missions team here is that every single one of the churches in the Reformed Church in America will be involved in RCA Global Mission, doing some kind of work. Some will be, investing in supporting missionaries. Some will be actively engaged in the work of mission in word and in deed, rebuilding, houses, rebuilding communities, investing in schools and helping people around the world. So that's my hope, my dream, my vision for all of the churches in the Reformed Church in America to be involved in the work of Global Mission. And my hope is that pastors will cast that vision, that of the importance of each one of the members of the church, the congregations, to be involved in the really important work of mission around the world.
Yeah, that's great. I've heard from so many different pastors I've been with the RCA for 18 years. I've been working in global mission for about the last 10 or 12. And I've heard from so many different pastors that, no matter what are the things that are controversial within their congregation or splits their congregation apart, global mission and the work they do in mission, both locally and globally, is what brings everyone together. And I have a prayer that happens for the RCA too, that what we do in global mission brings everyone together, both our RCA churches and those who are no longer part of the RCA.
And historically, Scott, we're in this process of restructuring, reimagining how we can continue to do ministry in the future. We experience a huge loss because of in the midst of all of this process. But historically, global mission is what has brought us together. Yeah. I always say that if we had done something good in the history of the Reformed Church in America, that's global mission. And I mean it. Because I believe that. We are a small denomination, but our mission footprints around the world are impressive.
Gigantic, right?
Are huge.
Yep.
It's just like it humbles me to come down and visit, the mission in India. Yeah. To walk, and see the work of our missionaries in India. In Bahrain, I was in Bahrain. I was blessed to put the first, brick for the new hospital in Bahrain.
Yeah.
So I was blessed to be invited to do that. It humbled me to say, Eddie, in your role as General Secretary, we invite you to put the first brick. And then I went to see the grand opening of the King Hamad Mission Hospital in Bahrain. It's just amazing. So I see that, and I see the work of our missionaries landing in those places, where, it wasn't only because they love Jesus and they wanted to share the good news.
Yeah.
So global mission has been, what has united us all over, all over these 300 plus years in the Reformed Church.
Yeah, Susanna talked about, the tagline for this week is Roots and Branches. And Susanna, thank you for sharing with us. We're all blessed by you. But the Roots and Branches, it's really a reference to our people. People who have come before and the people who are here now and the people who will still be coming. It's about the kind of giant mission names you've heard of Zwemer and Scudder and Swart and Tomes and Stirk and so many more that you all know about. And those people were the ones that set the table for so many of the people who you'll hear from this week. And I'm super excited for you to hear from our missionaries this week. They really are the main event, and their stories are amazing. And I think my encouragement for all of you this week is to be kind of tuned to what God might be saying to you. What might God be calling you to or your congregation to when it comes to mission? What does that look like for the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years? And if there's ways that we can help you get there, we would love to do that. Eddie, as you think about the next 3 days, what do you hope that people leave here with?
Yeah. I hope that when we leave on Saturday, everyone in attendance will go home inspired. That's the biggest hope that I have. We'll be inspired, we'll be in love with Jesus. We'll be in love with that calling of the proclamation of the gospel. We'll be in love with the gospel in a new way. That's my hope, that when we say goodbye on Saturday noon, everybody will go home and say, yes, I love Jesus. The gospel is the good news to the world, and I'll do my best to really do what Jesus called me to do. People that when we say goodbye on Saturday and we have the closing prayer, closing worship, we're going to go home inspired and in love in a new way with the gospel, with Jesus. I hope that all of the RCA missionaries that are here and mission partners that are here will know and will go home knowing that I am praying for all of you. All of the staff is praying for all of you, and we'll go home ready to serve in their communities, knowing that you are loved, you are appreciated, and that's my hope, that when you go home, you will say, yes, it's great to belong, to be part of the Reformed Church in America family. That's my prayer. I pray also, and I hope that all of the pastors that are here will go home and proclaim, the good news with boldness and passion, and will invite their churches, their congregations to be involved in the work of global mission. That's my prayer. That's my hope. And I pray and hope that when we go home on Saturday, we will also share the excitement of mission work, with their congregations. I know that in the U.S., especially North America, in our context, there has been so many things that people hear in their classes meeting, in the regional synods meeting. I hope that you will help us change the narrative. That's my hope. My hope is that when we go home to our classes meetings, our regional synod meetings, our own context in our congregations, the narrative will be different. So that's my hope, and I pray that the work of mission will continue strong in the future of the Reformed Church in America.
Thanks, Eddie. You'll see Eddie and I again. We get to bookend this thing. We're going to be up on Saturday morning as well. Don't worry, we're not keeping you through the afternoon. I could see people like, my flight leaves at 2. So we'll be back up here on Saturday, and you'll get to see us again. But I just want to thank you all again for coming. I want to thank you for your financial support that you give, for the many other ways that you support and encourage your missionaries. If you look in your conference program in the little guidebook there, the title of this session was Why RCA Global Mission? I'm not sure we answered that. Probably to no surprise of my team. But that's because over the next 2.5 days, your missionaries are going to answer that question, because they're the reason. They're the reason why you support RCA Global Mission. It's because of the people, and they are amazing people. And I believe that they are the answer to that question. So
And I'm glad to say, I'm glad to see a lot of young people here. You know, the theme is roots and branches.
Yeah.
I pray that many of the young people will be really involved in mission work. That is amazing. That is great. So I hope that many branches will be, will be involved in the work of mission. So thank you, friends. Thank you for those who invited these young people to come here. That is great to see.
Yeah, we always thank people for bringing young people, and that's really important, and we should always do that. Also, I'm glad the old people are here. Thank you for being, thank you for being the roots. I was going to say thank you for being our roots, but I'm not one of the young people anymore, clearly. Like I said, Eddie and I
Both
met
of us,
in our
yeah.
30s. That was a long time ago. You were in your older 30s than I was when we first met.
Yes,
but,
yes.
But yeah, it's great. It's so good to see so many people from different parts of the country, different generations, all being here together. Your worship team, can we give it up for the worship team who literally met for the first time this morning? So apparently that's a hard thing to do. I'm not musical. In fact, we were talking yesterday about all the microphones and stuff up here, and they go, "Oh man, we need so many more microphones for the drums." And I was like, "Wait, you put microphones on drums?" So good thing we have a team that knows about this stuff. So thank you again for being here. We look forward to interacting with all of you and answering any questions that you might have. But I would encourage you throughout this time to just be with the missionaries, ask them questions, reach out to them, and be inspired by what God is doing around the world. Thank you.
Thank you.